I will now talk about exporting data from Monet to CSV file. First, I will create one sample table, and then I will insert some data into that table. And we can now read from this sample table to see how it looks like. So this would be our table. And this data I will now export to CSV file, and for that I will use copy into statement. This copy into statement will get its data from our table by using this select query, and we will copy that data to this CSV file. All other settings will get their default values. So I will run this, and now we have a new file. That new file is this file here. I will open it, and we will take a look at those default values. First, this is UTF-8 file. We are using line feed as a line ending. Separator between columns is pipe. Wrapper around strings is double quote, and null is presented with this word. Now, one thing here to notice that when we are using default settings, we will export data with double quotes around our strings. But when we import our data, then default string wrappers are empty strings. So they differ. So if we export something with default settings, then we cannot import it with default settings because string wrappers will be different. I will now close this file and I will delete it. And then I will create another file, but this time I will change some default settings. You can notice here that I'm using on server subclause. This means that this full path is on server and this is default. So I don't have to declare that this is full path on server, but I can if I want to. We can also see here some things that are changed. Now we will use stub as a column separator. Ending will be explicitly defined as a line feed, and a string wrapper will be star. Now will be presented with this word here. So I will run this, and again we will take a look at our file. I will open it. And we can notice here that we are using star, we are using tab, and we are also using nil. So those are the things that we have changed. I will now close this file, but I will not delete it. I will run this statement again, the same statement. I will run it, but it will fail because we cannot overwrite already existing file. So first we have to delete our file, and then we can run some other statement. I will now clear my screen. If we are exporting a lot of data, then our CSV file will be really big. But we can compress our CSV file during the export. To do that, we just have to add a different file format extension to our file name. Here I'm using XZ. That means I'm using extreme Z compression, and this is a high-level compression that will create a really small file. But beside XZ, I can also use any of these file format extensions, and they differ in compression level. For example, XZ will give us the smallest file, while LZ4 will give us the biggest file. But if our compression is better, then we will spend more time compressing. I will now go back to terminal, and I will here paste one statement that will create a new file with XZ file format extension. I will run this, and now we have a new file. I will go to see that file. So this is that file. We can now open this with Equite Manager, and we will see here our file. So this file is compressed. I will then delete this file. I will go back to terminal and I will clean my screen. I will now show you how we can export data from Monet to CSV file by using client application. And for that I will use Python. So I will here in Spider, I will paste one Python procedure. And this procedure is similar to that procedure we have used for importing data, but there are two distinctions. First, instead of using set uploader, I will use set downloader because we want to download our data. And the second difference is, of course, our copy into statement. And this time we have to use this subclause on client. Everything else is the same. First we connect to our database, then we create a safe folder. So this is the folder to which it is safe to download our data. We will use that folder for our connection. Then we will create our statement, we will execute it, and at the end we will close everything. I will now run this statement, and we will create a new file. And that new file will again use compression. It will have a busy2 file format extension. I will now take a look at our file. So this is our file. I will delete it because we don't need it. And then I will go back to a terminal. Previously, I have said that the fastest way to copy data to and from Monet database is to use CSV files. But even faster way is to use binary files. And before I show you some statements, I will jump to this web page and we will talk about difference between little endian and big endian. Let's assume that I want to write this hexadecimal number to memory. Each two figures of this hexadecimal number can be represented with 1 byte. So 1, 2 would be this byte, 3, 4 would be this byte, we have this byte, and we have in total 4 bytes. If this here is our memory space, if we are writing bytes from the start of that memory space toward the end, so we are going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that would be big endian system. And if we are going in reverse, 7, 8, 5, 6, 3, 4, 1, 2, that would be little endian system. So if we go in this direction, this is big endian system. And if we go in reverse, that would be little endian system. And this system is important when writing binary files. We also have the term native endian. A native endian system is the system that is native to system on which Monet database is installed on. Now, for most of us, because we are using either AMD or ARM or Intel CPUs, native endian system will be little endian. If we are using Linux, we can run this statement here. So I will copy this statement here. I will go to terminal, but I will jump to this second tab and I will run this statement in the shell. If I run it, we will see that Linux is using little endian system. This is the default system. Then I will go back to mclient and here I will run one statement. So I will paste this statement here, and this statement is using 3 files. So we have letter file, number file, and calendar file, because each column from our table will be transferred to one separate binary file. We are using little endian, or we can use native endian, that would be the same. So I will run this, and after I run this, we can go here to desktop, and we will see here that we have 3 binary files. We have letter file, number file, calendar file, and each file has a different column in it. Besides using little endian, we can of course use big endian or native endian. We can use subclause on server or on client. If we are using on client, then we can use the same Python procedure I have previously shown you. We just have to replace this copy into statement with this copy into statement that is using binary files. I will now clean my screen. If we have exported our data to binary files, now we should have a way to import them back. And before that, I will first delete all of the records in our table, and then I will run next statement. This statement will read from our binary file, so we will read from each binary file, and we will place its content into columns in our database table. So I will run this, and now our table again has records. We can read from our table, and this is the content of our table. I will again empty my table, and then I will show you that we can also insert only 2 columns if we want to. This time I'm declaring only 2 columns for our table, and I'm using only 2 binary files. I will run this, and then we can read from our table, and we will see that first 2 columns are filled with data, but the 3rd column is empty. I will again empty our table. Now, if our table has the same columns in the same order as binary files, in that case we don't have to declare columns of our table. So here I'm just declaring my table. I will not declare my columns, but I know that my table has 3 columns in exactly this order, so this will also work. Again, I will read from my table, and we can see that now we have all of 3 columns filled with data. I will now clear my screen. It is also possible to read from binary files on the client. I will first delete all of the records from our table. Then I will go here to Spider. I will delete this procedure, and I will paste another procedure that is reading from binary files. The only difference between these two procedures is in this copy into statement. We are now using copy into statement that is reading from binary files on the client. I will run this statement, and then I will go back to terminal, and we can read from our table. And we can see now that our data is successfully imported.